Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 33, verse 19 and 20. Again, Canto 3, Chapter 33, verses 19 and 20. Yatra pravishtam atmanam vibhuddhanuchara jagu vapyam utpala gandhinyam kardamenon palalitam. Word for word. Yatra where. Pravishtam entered. At Atmanam unto her. Vibhuddha anuchara the associates of the denizens of heaven. Jagu sang. Vapyam in the pond. Utpala of lotuses. Gandhinyam with the fragrance. Kardamena by Kardama. Palalitam treated with great care. Translation. When Devahuti would enter that lovely garden to take her bath in the pond filled with lotus flowers, the associates of the denizens of heaven, the Gandharvas, would sing about Kardama's glorious household life. Her great husband, Kardama, gave her all protection at all times. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The ideal husband and wife relationship is very nicely described in this statement. Kardama Muni gave Devahuti all sorts of comforts in his duty as a husband, but he was not at all attached to his wife. As soon as his son, Kapildev, was grown up, Kardama at once left all family connection. Similarly, Devahuti was the daughter of a great king, Swayambhuva Manu, and was qualified and beautiful, but she was completely dependent on the protection of her husband. According to Manu, women, the fair sex, should not have independence at any stage of life. In childhood, a woman must be under the protection of the parents. In youth, she must be under the protection of the husband, and in old age, she must be under the protection of the grown children. Devahuti demonstrated all these statements of the Manu Samhita in her life. As a child, she was dependent on her father. Later, she was dependent on her husband. In spite of her opulence, she was later on dependent on her son, Kapiladev. I'll read the next verse, which is verse 20. Hitvatad ipsitatmanam api akandadayoshitam kinchik chakra vadanam putra vishleshanatura. Word for word. Hitva, having given up. Tat, that household. Ipsita tamam, most desirable. Api, even. Akandala Yoshitam, by the wives of Lord Indra. Kinchit Chakara Vadanam, she wore a sorry look on her face. Putra Vish Leshana, by separation from her son. Atura, afflicted. Translation. Although her position was unique from all points of view, saintly Devahuti, in spite of all her possessions, which were envied even by the ladies of the heavenly planets, gave up all such comforts. She was only sorry that her great son was separated from her. Devahuti was not at all purport by Srila Prabhupada. Devahuti was not at all sorry at giving up her material comforts, but she was very much aggrieved at the separation of her son. It may be questioned here that if Devahuti was not at all sorry to give up the material comforts of life, then why was she sorry about losing her son? Why was she so attached to her son? The answer is explained in the next verse. He was not an ordinary son. Her son was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can give up material attachment, therefore, only when one has attachment for the Supreme Person. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, Param Drishtva Nivartate. Only when one actually has some taste for spiritual existence can he be reluctant to follow the materialistic way of life. Okay. So these are the two verses, verses 19 and 20 from chapter 33. Just to set some context, this chapter is called The Activities of Kapila. And so in relation to that, Devahuti is being talked about. Um, and the translations are specifically, talking about her activities in this case and her relationship with Kardama Muni, who's her husband. Um, and it's it's also what it's also being talked about is how saintly she was. Despite her possessions that everyone other envied, she it didn't matter to her. She didn't care for those possessions so much. Um, and so the purport of these two verses, what's being talked about is that Kardama Muni and Devahuti had this ideal husband-wife relationship. Kardama Muni gave or provided all these comforts, but he wasn't necessarily attached to his wife. Um, and there's and then there's also mentioned that Devahuti wasn't really such a like didn't care for these material comforts so much, but she was very much aggrieved at the separation of her son. That point is stressed here. Um, and there's sort of two big themes that are talked about in these purports. Um, One is two big themes, I would say. One theme that's being talked about is um, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about how, according to Manu, women are to be under the protection at different phases of life. Initially, they're supposed to be under the protection of parents, then the husband or the spouse, and then under the protection of the grown children of that person. So Srila Prabhupada makes that reference. And the other theme that's talked about, which I thought was really interesting, is, Prabhupada mentions in the last sentence or the second to last sentence of verse 20, which is one can give up material attachment only one has attachment for the Supreme Person. And then he references the Bhagavad Gita as well. And that's the key main focus that I wanted to discuss today was that specific point, that theme that he makes. Um, but before going to that theme, I just wanted to share one more verse where uh, it's where Prabhupada talks about this idea of protection, protection for protection in general of women and other aspects as well. Um, it's from verse 6:18:42. So Canto 6, chapter 18, verse 42, where the chapter is talking about, or sorry, the canto is talking about the prescribed duties for mankind. And this is where it's emphasized again in this role um, of like protection. It says women need to be protected at different phases. A woman should be cared for by her father in childhood, by her husband in the youth, and by her grown sons in older age. This is the injunction of Manu, who says that women should not be given independence at any stage. Yeah, so what's interesting is that is like this protection, and then similarly, protection is to be given to cows and to the brahmanas that are also in our society. And we saw this kind of culture even like in this last generation of society, right? Especially in Asian cultures, in India and China, Korea, all these places. Up till the last generation, it was fairly common for like the mother to be living with the son and the family. Um, but that culture is starting to go away in this, especially in my generation, I will say, and even in some of the previous generations. That's the only point I will make on this Vedic culture aspect, not so much in the women part, but more on the Vedic culture that was taking place. And that's changed as there's migration happening from Asia to the Western culture, moving to America or Europe, for example. That's just one small point I wanted to make on that topic. Now, the second theme, which is around, uh, again, the statement that Prabhupada makes, which is only one when one has only when one actually has taste for spiritual existence can he be reluctant to follow the materialistic way of life. Oftentimes, we talk about what you should not do versus what you should do. And uh, I thought Prabhupada makes this very critical point, uh, which is only when you develop the taste for something that's good can you be let going of the thing that you should not be doing. And so he makes that, I think it's a very critical point. We often focus on the don't instead of what we should be doing. And and he's saying that unless one has taste for Krishna consciousness or this lifestyle of living this spiritual life, then you're not going to give up the other things. And in relation to that, uh, there's a few critical places in the Bhagavatam where this point is emphasized. This this doing this versus just focusing on the don't do's part. Um, one place that's made is in Canto 11, chapter 2, verse 42. I was looking up different aspects where Prabhupada and the translations talk about this. And so one of the places this it's talked about is yeah, this verse, Canto 11, chapter 2, verse 42. Devotion or experiencing the supreme and detachment from material things happen at the same time, just like how eating satisfies hunger and provides nourishment simultaneously. Um, so on in the purport it says, according to Jiva Goswami, that one who's experiencing the blissful personality of Godhead Krishna, they become uninterested in anything other than Krishna. Therefore, their attachment to Krishna increases at every moment. Um, and then the distinction is talked about detachment versus renunciation. Um, And again, that can only happen once you develop the taste for Krishna consciousness. And then another verse, this is in Canto 1. Again, the same point is made that the whole spiritual process leads to perfect knowledge of everything, material and spiritual. And the results of such perfect knowledge are that one becomes detached from material affection and becomes attached to spiritual activities. So again, it's a like becoming detached or letting go of material attachments is a result of developing this perfect knowledge. And then he clarifies in the purport that, becoming detached from material things does not becoming inert, aloof, alone, um, or like, exercising these cultish behaviors. It's more about how do you apply positive service to the positive form, and how do you naturally become detached from these inferior aspects as you become attached to superior things. So that point is again emphasized. And the other place this is mentioned is with respect to Prahlad Maharaj. which the whole discussion of Prahlad Maharaj happens in Canto 7. So Prahlad Maharaj makes the statement that because of their uncontrolled senses, this is in Canto 7, Chapter 5, verse 30, Prahlad Maharaj makes the statement that because of their uncontrolled senses, people or persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress towards hellish conditions and repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Their inclinations towards Krishna um, are never aroused either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by a combination of both. So he's making the point, Paul March is making the point that if you keep hankering after like the sort of these inferior, material th attachments, it's like you're chewing the same thing. You're not necessarily getting any new taste out of it. Um, you have to, acquire that devotional desire that is mentioned. And so this brings up this next question, which is like, okay, great. So like you have to develop attachment to the Supreme to be able to let go of material attachment. So the question that raises is, how do you develop that devotional desire? Um, and Prahlad Maharaj is given as an example of someone who had devotional desire. He's an example of that. Someone who had sort of bad desires. An example of that is Hiranyakashipu. He's the complete opposite of that. And so, the question is, how does one develop that devotional desire? What is the process to to do that? Um, and what's interesting is that, in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, and actually before, like one of the questions that Yudhishthira Maharaj asks in the Bhagavatam is how did Hiranyakashipu turn against his own son? And the same statement Prahlad Maharaj, the Yudhishthira Maharaj asks the question, how did Prahlad Maharaj, being born in a demoniac family, develop this hankering for devotional desire, this aspect of bhakti? How did he do that? In one sense, we're all born in this um, rat race, and how does one develop this devotional desire, this aspect of bhakti? And so that question gets answered in various aspects of Bhagavatam. Um, so in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, he was born in a demonic family. He lived in so much opulence. He was a heir, he was the next in line to the throne. He had all the wealth. He had fame, he had reputation, he had all the honor possible. He sort of had everything that people wanted, right? Um, and he is the exclusive person that's in line for the throne. So how did he achieve this devotional desire? And the reality is that Prahlad had absolutely no desire for any of these things that I just mentioned: honor, fame, reputation, opulence, so on and so forth. Um, and then on the flip side, you had someone like, you know, Duryodhana, right, who was ready to gamble, he's ready to cheat, ready to murder, burn houses, poison people, only to become a king. He was ready to steal things. His source of just his source of joy was when the Pandavas were in distress. His source of joy is when the Rasamuni with thousands of disciples is going to the Pandavas and is asking for food. So complete opposite end of the spectrum. Prahlad Maharaj had all these things, but didn't care for it. And then you had someone like Duryodhana who did not have all these things and was ready to do everything at his disposal to hanker for material attachment. Um, and so it's answered here that the way this occurs, this how does one develop devotional desire and non-devotional desire? A lot of it happens through the mercy you get from senior Vaishnavas. And so Jay and Vijay were associates of Narayana, But because they were cursed by a sadhu, one of them took birth as Hiranyakashipu in their next life because they had displeased a Vaishnava, right? For Prahlad Maharaj, it's described why did he just have the strong devotional desire? It's because he was hearing Harikatha in the womb and receiving blessings of Narada Muni. So from the get-go, he had this mercy of Narada Muni where he was hearing the Bhagavatam. He was not displeasing Vaishnavas. He was not the object of wrath. He was receiving the blessings and the good wishes. Um, so it's not necessarily that by worship or that by taking sannyas that you get to Krishna. It's actually getting the mercy of a pure, of a senior Vaishnava. That's where that can influence you towards to getting devotional desire. And so, um, the statement is made in Canto 7 that without pleasing a Vaishnava, you cannot attain Krishna. And it was Narada Muni's grace is what caused Prahlad Maharaj to achieve this devotional desire. Same in the case of Dhruva Maharaj. It was the grace of his mother and Narada Muni in the forest that it made the Dhruva Maharaj achieve this this devotional desire. And on the flip side, it's the wrath of the four Kumaras, it what caused Jay and Vijay to become demons. And so, getting any chance to associate with a person who associates with Krishna is like we should jump at that chance to achieve that devotional desire. I think this verse in Madhya Lila 22.51, the verse says, Mahat kripa vina ko na karme bhakti naya Krishna bhakti dure rahu samsara nahe kshaya. Getting the kripa or the mercy of a maha of a mahat um, or a pure devotee is critical is what this verse is saying. This verse is saying unless one is favored by a pure devotee, one cannot attain the platform of devotional service. To say nothing of Krishna bhakti, one cannot even be relieved from the bondage of material existence. It says Krishna bhakti dure, or dur means far away. It'll stay far away if you don't get that mercy. So that's the point that he makes, that Lord Chaitanya makes in the CC. And so then there's sort of these three things that are emphasized: associating with a sadhu, receiving their grace, and then the opportunity to serve a sadhu. These three different actions. And so the first thing that's advised is to get the association of a sadhu. And then the greatest seva we can do is is getting their blessings, ashirvad from them, and then restructuring our life to get support from that Vaishnava. Um, and so that is those are the behaviors we can develop. Hanuman is another great example of that, right? He approaches Lord Ram, he associates with him, he receives his grace, and then he serves him um, to the fullest extent possible. And in fact, receiving the association of a devotee or a senior Vaishnava is the mercy of Krishna. So when Krishna is pleased with one's desire or sincerity, the gift is the fact that we're getting an association of a sadhu. That is a gift in itself, right? And that is to be seen as Krishna's mercy. And the last point I'll make here is when Hanuman and Vibhishan, meet. Vibhishan makes this very interesting point to Hanuman. He says, I'm living among the sharp teeth. I'm living amidst Ravana, Kumbhakarna, all these personalities. So I'm living amongst these sharp teeth. and I'm the tongue, and the teeth or the tooth cuts through the tongue, but the tongue never retaliates. We have these sharp teeth, but the tongue can never really retaliate against the teeth. And so he's saying, Vibhishan, I'm living in this negative association, but my continued chanting of Lord Ram and to worship Ram is what I'm doing. And Hanuman recognizes that that is how Vibhishan finally receives the blessings of Ram. Um, and then, because of Vibhishan's sincerity, Vibhishan gets the association of Hanuman, who's a sadhu, who's a devotee of Lord Ram, and then therefore Vibhishan connects with Lord Ram and so on and so forth. So this specific point, to wrap it up from this purport, is what I wanted to stress on. Again, the sentence that Prabhupada said is, Only when one actually has some taste for spiritual existence can he be reluctant to follow the materialistic way of life." And how we develop that taste for spiritual existence is what we talked about, which is through getting the mercy of a senior Vaishnava. So I'll pause there and see if devotees have any comments, or if they want to add anything, please do so.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Namaskar. Really nice discussion here. Thank you for sharing wonderful examples. I joined about a few minutes late, so I wasn't sure. Um, you discussed also this point about Narada Muni also, right? The way Narada Muni, he and his mother, son of a single mother who served the Bhakti Vedantas, and that is how he received that mercy. So that is yet another beautiful example from Srimad
Yeah,
Bhagavatam. And I
yeah.
was thinking that, as people, as you and me and others who have received that mercy, what is our responsibility? And
Mm,
uh, this is really where the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada comes into play, which is this missionary spirit of trying to maximize the bhakti associations for people who normally may not be even inclined in that direction.
yeah,
Because fact of the matter is, I was never inclined.
yeah,
Because some person made a forced effort
yeah,
to intersect my life with some component of bhakti, either through
yeah,
prasad, either through kirtan, or through a devotee, a very senior devotee. Somehow I've landed where I've landed. And so,
yeah.
what is our responsibility here for people like of us who have received that mercy? And yeah, we may all be in different stages. We're still kanishtas and madhyamas, or anywhere in between. However, the fact still remains that we've received it, and what is our responsibility uh, to pass it on? Uh, and I just wanted to share that. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing, Prabhu. Yeah, I like that point a lot. I mean, because yeah, if it's not shared with others, then there's no way to let go of the material attachment. That's the point that's being made. Unless you share, the other person can never let go of it. Yeah, yeah. On what that point, Prabhu, but the one thing I've been thinking about is, and maybe I'm getting digressing here a bit, reaching out to others. Maybe the term outreach isn't right, but I that's the term that comes to my mind. It's not something that I necessarily see all of us being fired up about, at least in the Chicago land area, versus when I think about what I see, like let's say in other congregations like ISV or Silicon Valley and things like that. And like as youth, like as we grew up in this congregation, that wasn't a core focus, and I don't know why, Prabhu, that was the case. So I often reflect upon that, like how can we do that now? Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good observation. And, the way I look at it is every congregation has its rasa.
Yeah,
And some
yeah,
congregations, emphasis is festivals, and through festivals attract families, and through families
yeah,
attract, all kind of demographics, the husband, wife, and the child.
yeah,
And then, and again, it's what is the strength, and what is the strength by which we can
yeah,
try to provide more opportunities for other souls, but doesn't mean that we stagnate at that. Um,
yeah, yeah,
it's a starting point. It's what our strength is, but based on that strength, can we do something more? And so, yeah, I think book distribution is also pretty strong.
yeah.
Activity happens here.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, but of course, again, I think at the end of the day, the opportunities are galore because Srila Prabhupada and his disciples have given us a lot
yeah,
to engage ourselves in.
yeah,
And I think you're asking, I feel you're asking the right question is how can we better than where we are today? And
yeah,
what can we learn from, other really nice, engaged and such congregations. So
yeah, yeah.
thank you so much for bringing that up. And yeah, I think each one of us, if we at least aspire and think in that direction, something better will definitely manifest.
Definitely.
That's my understanding.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Any other comments from devotees? Otherwise, we can end here. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great Krishna conscious Saturday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank